47 hours and 36 minutes. That's how much time remained when Dmitri Kozlov walked into the most secure vault in Moscow. 3 stories beneath the Kozlov Industries headquarters, behind blast doors that could withstand a nuclear strike, lay the true archives of their empire. Documents that governments would kill for, secrets that could topple presidents, and somewhere in this labyrinth of steel and shadow, the truth about their father's real will. "Are you certain about this?" Alexei asked, his voice echoing in the sterile corridor. The younger brother's hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the stimulants he'd been taking to stay awake. 3 days without sleep had carved deep lines under his eyes. Dmitri didn't answer. He simply pressed his palm against the biometric scanner, watching as layers of security systems recognized his DNA, his heartbeat, his retinal patterns. The final door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a room that contained more power than most countries possessed. The Viktor Kozlov archive. Floor-to-ceiling filing cabinets stretched into darkness, each one containing decades of contracts, correspondence, and carefully documented crimes. Their father had been obsessive about record-keeping, treating information like currency, valuable only when properly stored and strategically deployed. "He always said the dead tell the most interesting stories," Dmitri murmured, running his finger along files marked with dates from the 1980s. "Let's see what ghost stories father left behind." They worked in methodical silence, pulling files with surgical precision. Birth certificates, adoption papers, medical records, the paper trail of 3 Kozlov children, not 2. Katerina's existence had been meticulously documented, then carefully erased from all official records after 2002, the year she was supposed to have died. "Here," Alexei said, his voice tight with discovery. He held up a manila folder marked KK Contingency Alpha. Inside were photographs that made both brothers freeze. Images of a car accident, twisted metal, blood on broken glass, police reports in Russian and English, and at the bottom of the file, a payment receipt to a private military contractor in Chechnya, $2 million, paid 3 days before Katerina's accident. "Jesus Christ," Alexei whispered. "He tried to have our sister killed." But Dmitri was already deeper in the file, his face growing paler with each document. Bank transfers to Swiss accounts, communications with intermediaries, a detailed plan to eliminate Viktor's daughter and consolidate power with his sons. And then, the final document. A letter in their father's handwriting, dated just weeks before his death. "My dearest Katerina, if you are reading this, then you have survived both my paranoia and my weakness. I write this knowing I may not live to see you claim what is rightfully yours, but also knowing that my attempts to eliminate you have failed. I convinced myself that daughters were liabilities in our world. I was wrong. You are the strongest of my children, the most cunning, the most deserving of the empire I built. Dmitri has the vision, Alexei has the hunger, but you have what I never possessed, the ability to rebuild what others destroy. The will Katerina carries is genuine. More than that, it is just. Forgive an old man's crimes and claim your birthright. Your father, Viktor Kozlov." The silence in the vault was deafening. 2 brothers surrounded by the accumulated secrets of a lifetime, finally understanding the true scope of their father's manipulation. "He played us," Alexei said, his voice barely audible. "All of us. He tried to kill her, then left her everything when the assassination failed." Dmitri's mind was already working through the implications. Not everything. He left her control, but he left us the knowledge of how to use it. He knew we'd find this letter eventually. What are you saying? I'm saying our father was a chess master who planned moves beyond his own death. Dmitri carefully placed the letter back in the file. He wanted us to find this. He wanted us to know that Katerina survived an assassination attempt. He wanted us to understand exactly who we're dealing with. As if summoned by their conversation, Dmitri's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Did you find Daddy's love letter yet? -K.
The brothers exchanged glances. She had been watching them. Somehow, despite their legendary security, despite the most sophisticated surveillance countermeasures money could buy, Katerina knew. They were in the vault. Another message arrived. Penthouse. 1 hour. Come alone, Dmitri, and bring the letter. She's been inside our systems, Alexei realized. She's been watching us this whole time. Dmitri was already moving toward the exit. No, she's been learning from the same teacher we had. Father didn't just leave her money, Alexei. He left her 20 years to become exactly what he trained us to be. 1 hour later, Dmitri stepped off the private elevator into his penthouse office. The lights were dimmed, the curtains drawn against the Moscow skyline. At first, he thought the room was empty. Then he saw her. Katerina sat behind his desk, in his chair, reading a file that should have been locked in his private safe. She had changed from her steel mill attire into an elegant black dress that somehow made her look even more dangerous. You redecorated, she said without looking up. Father would have hated the modern art. He preferred. His power displays more. Classical. How did you get in here? She finally raised her eyes, and Dmitri saw something in them that made his blood chill. Not anger, not hatred, but something far more dangerous. Complete understanding. The same way I survived an assassination attempt at 16, brother. The same way I've stayed alive for 22 years while you and Alexei built this empire. I learned to become indispensable to people who thought they were using me. She gestured to the file in her hands. Your head of security? Magnificent man. Very loyal. Also very lonely. After his divorce. It's amazing what pillow talk can accomplish when you're patient enough to earn trust. Dmitri felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. Not just his penthouse, his entire world. What do you want, Katerina? I want justice. She stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. Not revenge. Justice. Father tried to have me killed because he thought I was weak. You and Alexei inherited an empire built on my blood. Now I want what was promised. The company. The offshore accounts. The political connections. The legitimate businesses and their criminal enterprises. All of it. She stopped directly in front of him. But I'm not unreasonable. I'm prepared to offer you both positions in the new structure. Dmitri laughed, a sound with no humor in it. You want us to work for you. I want us to work together. Father's greatest mistake was believing that power required solitude. I've spent 2 decades learning a different lesson. Power requires family. She moved to the window, looking out at the city that had raised all 3 of them. Do you know what I've been doing for the past 20 years, Dmitri? I've been building my own empire. Smaller than yours, but more flexible. I have interests in Singapore, investments in London, partnerships in Dubai. I have politicians in 6 countries who owe me favors, and criminals in 12 who fear me. The implications hit Dmitri like a physical blow. You're not just claiming father's inheritance. You're proposing a merger. I'm proposing survival. She turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw something other than calculation in her eyes. Something that might have been genuine emotion. Kozlov Industries is magnificent, but it's Russian. Tied to one country, one economy, one political system. What happens when that system changes? What happens when the next revolution comes? She was right, and they both knew it. The Russian oligarch system was built on relationships that could evaporate overnight. Fortunes that had taken decades to build could disappear with a single political shift. You're offering diversification, he said slowly. I'm offering evolution. Father built an industrial empire. You and Alexei built a financial empire. I'm proposing we build a global dynasty that can survive anything. She moved closer, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. 24 hours. Dmitri, that's what remains of your deadline. But I'm offering you a choice he never gave me. Which is, join me willingly and share in something greater than what any of us could build alone. Or resist, and watch as I take everything anyway, but as an enemy instead of family. The penthouse fell silent except for the distant hum of Moscow traffic 40 floors below. Two siblings stood in the heart of a billionaire empire, each representing different visions of power, different interpretations of their father's legacy. Dmitri looked at his sister, really looked at her for the first time since she had returned from a dead. In her face, he could see traces of the frightened girl who had attended their father's funeral. But he could also see something else, the same ruthless intelligence that had built Kozlov Industries, refined by 20 years of survival and tempered by experiences his privileged life had never required. I need to discuss this with Alexei, he said finally. Katerina smiled, and for just a moment, she looked like the sister he remembered from childhood. Of course, family decisions should be made by the family. She gathered her files and moved toward the private elevator. At the door, she paused. Dmitri, the assassination attempt 22 years ago? It failed because someone warned me. Someone who worked for father but believed his plan was wrong. She stepped into the elevator. Ask yourself who in your organization might feel the same way about what you're planning to do to me. The elevator doors closed, leaving Dmitri alone with the weight of revelation and the ticking clock of an impossible choice. Outside his windows, Moscow glittered like a jewel, beautiful and cold and unforgiving. Somewhere in that maze of lights and shadows, his sister was waiting for an answer that would determine not just the fate of their empire, but the definition of family itself. 24 hours to choose between war and transformation. In the world of the Kozlov dynasty, it was about to become the most expensive decision of their lives. Please kindly subscribe for the next episodes and turn on the notification.